It went from a major lead from Donald Trump, and now all of a sudden you're in a statistical dead heat with Kamala Harris in most of the major swing states and across the board. And this is what these polls are showing, Will.
The Harris campaign is benefiting from basically all of the good, positive stories that a campaign would normally get throughout months of campaigning, whether it be winning the nomination after fighting in the battlegrounds of the primaries, and then getting a positive bump as we see a new candidate, a new face, and then we see what will be a vice presidential pick here in just a few days, as they're reporting that Kamala Harris will be touring swing states next week with a VP candidate.
A lot of people just excited at the opportunity. I think there was a lot of Democrats that just did not want to vote for Joe Biden, and they definitely didn't want to vote for Donald Trump. Now they're given the opportunity to vote for someone with more radical views, which they probably like, plus someone who, again, is not 80 years old. I think that does go a long way. I see a lot of comments, people going, I don't believe the polls and all that. And sure, polling in the last decade, or maybe the last 3 election cycles, hasn't been what it was previously, so there is that. We also are still quite a ways out. What the Trump campaign has to figure out is how to get sort of the media eyes back to them.
The media is giving her a huge pass right now. It's that honeymoon period. Sure. She's the new nominee. It's a very unprecedented story for any of these journalists that are covering this. Have never gotten to cover something like this, so they're very excited. President Trump is leading Kamala Harris by 3 points, down from his 7-point lead over Biden in June. But out of the 2,100 or almost 2,200 respondents that were in the poll, 883 were Democrats, 654 were Republicans, and 544 were independents. So the poll obviously very heavily slanted of Democrat respondents, but the independents having almost as many as Republicans. One, it shows you that the poll could be skewed. Yeah. But if the independents are shifting, though, down from a 7-point lead to a 3-point lead, that's where you have to be careful, because the independent vote shifting over to the Democrat from the Republican candidate could be a game-changing thing, which is maybe what they were hoping for when they swapped her out.
You're going to have to counter them more with policy, what it looks like, what it means to American people, what does it mean to start limiting freedom of speech. Those are the kind of topics that you'd hope would resonate beyond a personal attack. It does seem like sort of the meme culture of conservative internet, while sometimes very funny, loses the facts. And you look at what feels like this. Honestly, most of the time the White House puts out something, it's like the most cringe, awkward video.
Something stacked against you is that the media is, and currently
biased.
Is biased. They are promoting these polls. They are showing that Kamala Harris is a game changer for this election. And when people point to the fact that, she didn't get the votes in the primary when she ran, she had to drop out before Iowa. The DNC is very savvy. And the machine that runs the Democrat Party made this choice because they thought it was their best option to win. So all of that history, one, should be brought up and discussed. But if they're allowed to just keep giving cover, they're going to try to find a way to win. This was their dirty trick of 2024, was getting Biden to drop out and put her as the nominee without her having to receive votes.
Right.
Because for some reason, they believe that she is their best choice in November. And that should be, if you want conservative values, if you want a Republican to win, that should concern you of what do they know that we don't? What is their plan for moving forward and pushing her out there as the candidate that they believe can win? So the memes, the personal attacks, that isn't going to counter whatever they have in store moving forward.
Well, it's not going to win over anyone when you're talking about a small percentage of independent voters, really, at the end of the day, who is whether you're going to be able to motivate people to go vote for President Biden. Now you have a whole group that you can motivate to go vote for someone who's just not Trump and is younger. So at that point, you now all of a sudden the tables got turned, where it was Joe Biden was the old guy in the race. Now all of a sudden you have, Donald Trump is the old man in the race, and you have a younger, more appealing when it comes to I'd say the mainstream. Because look, Donald Trump, whether you love him or not, you could say, is a polarizing figure. She has a pretty significant record in terms of she was part of this administration the last 4 years, all of her time in California. There's a lot you can actually talk about if we start focusing on that, like you said, the important issues that actually matter that shouldn't really then impact the polls in some ways, because it's a clear who you would support or who you wouldn't support. But if you get lost in these personal attacks, if you get lost in these, like I said, almost the meme culture of it, it starts to become a concern because you have a lot of people who will be turned off by that. Either they're not going to vote or they don't understand the real ramifications here of what could be a Harris presidency.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, ultimately, when you really look at it, most people, I would say, are concerned about, providing for their families. They're concerned about, how tough it is to be able to afford the things that you need to, both support yourself and those that you love and care about. They're concerned about the increasing pressures from millions of illegal immigrants crossing our borders. They're concerned about, the prospect and the increased likelihood of nuclear war. These are all very real things that transcend, Democrats versus Republicans. And when they see politicians who are distracted away from these issues,
right,
this is when they tune it out. And they're like, okay, well, you obviously don't care about us and what I care about, so I don't know why I should listen to you anymore.
There's a lot of time left, and really the campaign starts after Labor Day. That's when everyone is focused on looking at who's going to be the next president. Yeah. So these things could be just a blip, or they could be lasting. That will take time.
I really want to look at some of those states like Georgia, some of the states that went for Biden, and for a lot of times were historically red states that moved. Will those move back? Trump looked like he was taking a big lead in those states, and those are the ones that I think you could see some course correction here, and maybe the Democrats could sneak back in and take it.
You also see that the Trump campaign is spending $10 million in swing states. This is their biggest ad buy since January when it was in the primary. So they're focusing. Normally those ads, they'll be minute-long ads, and they'll be on the record. I think that hopefully the campaign is now focusing on her record to move forward. But, when you had weeks of uncertainty of if Biden was going to be the nominee and now he is not.
Or if he was even alive.
Right. Then you had to make a pivot, and it takes a little bit of time to catch up.
Oddly enough, look, I think a lot of people can say this. When the assassination attempt happened, you obviously saw a huge spike for President Trump. They had to figure out a way, the Democrats did, to get your mind off of that. And what did they do? They got rid of President Biden. I mean, that's a pretty drastic thing to do that. They got rid of President Biden and subbed in Harris, and now we're going to sub in a VP who may be a pretty popular name. And if that happens, you've got to realize that, sure, the momentum is going to kind of move, and it may be, this presidency may end up being sort of like who gets the ball last in a really close game. It just happens to be your team got the ball last, you got the last moment that popped. It may not be this landslide one way or the other. It's an odd time, but also it's crazy to think we just now are getting our vice presidential picks with J.D. Vance, and now we don't even know who's going to be the Democrat. We just now got the Democrat presidential pick, and the election is 100 days out? Something like that? Less than 100 days? It is unprecedented. It is a crazy time